chapter 6, verses 23 and 24. And the king commanded, and Daniel was taken up out of the lion's den. Now, when the men that had laid the snare for him were come near, the same day, they were cast into the den with their children. Yet before that night, the lions had torn them in pieces, and there was nothing to be seen but their bones in the morning. Then the king was much affected when he saw Daniel, and he spake and said, Blessed be the God of Daniel, and he delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. Have you ever been in a situation where it seemed like everything was going against you? Like the walls were closing in, the way out was blocked, and you couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel? Well, today we read about a man named Daniel who found himself in a similar situation. But unlike many of us, Daniel knew just what to do. So let's jump right into it. So we pick up in the story in chapter 6, and we find Daniel once again in trouble with the king. If you remember, in the last episode, the king was so impressed with Daniel's interpretation of his dream that he made Daniel a great official in the kingdom. This promotion, however, did not sit well with some of the other officials, and they began to complain to the king, saying things like, How can we serve the king and also follow our laws if this foreigner is now over us? You've put him in a place of authority. It's not fair. And the king was persuaded by their arguments. That's right. The king agreed with them and went against his own best judgment. Well, what happens next, you ask? Let's find out together. In verse 7, it says that the king made an order that for 30 days no one was to pray to anyone but the king. And if anyone was found praying to their God, they were to be thrown into a lion's den. And Daniel, whose name means God is my judge, continued to pray, as he always did, 3 times a day, with the windows open towards Jerusalem. And as you can imagine, one of the men searching for someone to accuse of breaking the new law looked through the window and saw Daniel praying and worshiping. Quickly, he ran to the king and told him what he had seen. And although the king didn't want to believe it, he sent another group of men who came back and confirmed the first man's report. Now, as you can imagine, Daniel was very upset with himself for getting caught, but he knew that he had done the right thing. In verse 10, it says, Then Daniel was greatly distressed, and when they had called him and he had talked with the king, the decision was given that the den of lions should be prepared for him. And in the evening, after they had signed the document and sealed it with the king's signet, the king commanded that he should be thrown into the den. Now, when Daniel heard that, he went home that night and told his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, not to worry, for God would deliver him. Then he told them to close the windows in their upstairs room, kneel down on the floor, and pray, just as they had done before. And the rest of the story is found in chapter 6, verses 22 through 24. And the king arose very early in the morning, and all the multitude of the king's courtiers with him, and went to the den. And he cried out, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, are your gods whom you serve able to save you from the lions? Then the king said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, your God is able to deliver you from the lions. Will you not then acknowledge that there is no other God besides me? That's when Daniel turned toward the king, and with a gentle voice and respectful speech, he said to the king, O king, may your words go for an answer before your eyes. My God has sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. See that in the morning, O king, I and my companions were cast in unto the lions. Daniel answered, When you commanded that we should not pray for 3 hours, our God whom we serve was ready to deliver us from the lions. Also, O king, we will not fear. Thus says Daniel, for you have said that which is not true, and this is nothing but lies. The words that the king spoke were recorded in writing, and he gave orders that these words were to be sealed with the king's seal and delivered to Daniel according to what the king had commanded, and he did so. Then the king was much affected when he saw Daniel, and he spake and said, Blessed be the God of Daniel, and he delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. And I must admit, I love how this story ends. Daniel's God saved him from the lions, and instead of giving God all the glory and praise, the proud king decided to take all the credit for himself. Bless his heart. God still works in mysterious ways, though, and sometimes we do understand why something happens or why someone gets saved, and we question God about it. But in the end, we know that only God deserves the glory and the praise. So what about you? What part of this story stood out to you the most? I'd love to hear from you. Also, please don't forget to share, comment, and like. We'll see you next time.